everybody. Welcome to CreativePro and our monthly live stream. I'm Khara Plicanic and happy fall, right? I can't be the only one who's super excited. I'm feeling like I'm dressed for fall today, even though it's not totally feeling like it outside here in Nebraska where I live, but I don't care. I'm going to dress for it anyway. So, yeah, great. Well, everyone, welcome. Here's what we're going to talk about today. We are going to be talking about designing a photo book in InDesign. So there are a lot of different tools for making books. And today we're going to be looking at what I think is the best, which is InDesign. So we're going to be talking about how you get started with that, like what all do you need to gather and figure out ahead of time, how to set up preferences in InDesign so that things work the way you want them to. We'll actually go ahead and build a document, and I'll show you a couple different ways to do that, whether working from scratch or with a template. Then we'll talk through the actual designing process and like literally how you do it, at least how I do it, have done it for many, many years, what the editing and or retouching process looks like if you're, working with clients. And then of course we can talk about exporting. So just, yeah, that's what we're going to be getting into today. And if you are loving InDesign and you're like, this is so amazing and I want to learn more, I want to let you know that here at CreativePro, we've got your back. We have an InDesign summit coming up. Oops. And I forgot that one's later. That one's going to be in December. And before that, we have the Design and AI Summit, which also includes InDesign. So lots of good InDesign ahead. But if you want to learn more about AI and using AI in Photoshop and Illustrator and InDesign, all of Creative Cloud and ChatGPT and all the good stuff out there for video as well, then you want to check out the Design and AI Summit. And at the end of our broadcast today, I'm going to have a special discount code that will save you $100 on the event if you want to check that out. So stick around. Okay. And let's see. So let's talk a little bit. I guess, first of all, I'd love to know in the chat what everyone's background is when it comes to designing the photo books. Like for myself, I was a professional photographer for many, many years with a full-blown portrait studio business. So I actually built my business off of my photo books. So every single one of my clients got a photo book. It was just priced into my sessions. And that was always my strategy because even back before we had all the AI stuff, back in the day, um, I knew the value of a print that you can hold in your hands versus just giving your client digital files. And I wanted them to have a book. So I made albums for all of my wedding clients. I made albums for all of my senior portrait clients. And I made little albums for just like family portraits sessions that I did. So everybody got an album. Not all of them were as high end, big and fancy as the wedding album, for example. But I had so much fun playing with all the different album types out there and cool features from different album companies. And it was really a big part of my business. And I think that it was a big part of why my business was so successful because albums were something that could be physically taken around and shared. And they have a special power, I think, to really wow whoever's looking at them. So that was a big part of my work. And I designed every single one of them in Adobe InDesign. And then I output that to a bunch of different places depending on what I was doing. And we can talk about that today. So, knowing that, I guess everyone's going to be coming at this from a different place, right? So, maybe, excuse me, I swear I save up all my coughs and my throat tickles just for when we're live. Goodness. Um, so you may be coming to this from someone who does travel photography, like maybe you're a landscape photographer, maybe you're a portrait artist. There's a million different ways you could use this. Maybe you want to make an album of your portfolio. And so maybe it's actually going to be like finished design work that you put in here instead of straight up photographs. So I'm going to just demo like a travel album today, but this could be anything you want it to be. I've created albums also with contact sheets. So from my weddings, when I would shoot the weddings, not only did I make them like a gorgeous photo printed album that really highlighted all my favorite stuff from their day and really told the story of their day. But I would also make them a proof book with like a contact sheet of all of their printed out photos, because let's be real, even though they may have gotten the digital images, I know that they're going to just sit somewhere on a hard drive or closet. And I wanted all of them to be printed because I was thinking about how fun that is for them to look back on later. So that was just something I always did. I didn't wait for people to order albums. I priced it in. All right, so before we jump into all of this, let's bounce over to the chat and I want to see what people are saying in here. The one and only Mike Rankin is with us today, and he uses the Blurb plugin, which I'm going to show you briefly today because it is awesome, and I think it's a super great way to get started with this. If you are newer to InDesign, maybe you're a little anxious about setting everything up right, that's a really cool plugin. And looks like Betty also uses it. Yes. With Lightroom. So yes, you can, of course, design photo books with Lightroom. I've never done it, so I don't know how easy or not it is or flexible or whatever, but I'm sure it's great. Betty, I'd love to know what you think of it. Obviously you've had some success with it, so that is great. Oh, this is fun. Box Hill says the president and CEO of their organization's retiring and they're going to make a retrospective photo book as a gift. Yay! Well, I'm so glad that we can help you out with that, hopefully. So this is all super exciting, and I think you guys are really going to like how simple it is. Another thing that I always like to point out is that photographers often get sucked into trying to design photo albums in Photoshop, right? Because the word photos in the name. So they think photo, I'm a photographer, I'm making a photo book, I'm going to do it with Photoshop. And you can do it with Photoshop, but oh my gosh, that's like the worst way to do this. It just is not the way to do this. Photoshop's great. I love it too, obviously, but it is not geared towards designing multi-page document layouts. And while it is possible to do it in Photoshop, it is just a hassle that you don't want. Okay. So I am very happy to share this InDesign look with you because even if you're not a super InDesign whiz, it's the best way to do it. And it's so simple. And there are so many other tools out there. Like even Blurb has a standalone app that you can use for designing books. But it's like, if you're going to learn how to use that little app, why not just learn how to use InDesign, and then you can do so many more things. So let's take a look at that. So I wanted to show you, this is the Blurb website. Okay, so before you start any design project, any album, you have to like know where you're going to print this thing, because you don't want to build your album and then have to reconfigure it for a certain vendor. So you want to figure out your vendor first and then figure out what book you want to make, whether they have templates or they'll certainly have some documentation somewhere that tells you how to build the document. You want to have all that figured out ahead of time. All right. So I'm going to make a book from complete scratch today in InDesign, but I'm going to show you how I would do this if I was using this blurb plugin, which is also great. And I used it many, many, many times. But today we're just going to build from scratch to just show you how that works. But anyway, here is blurb.com. And if you come in here and you go to Design Tools and you click on Adobe InDesign, they have this free plugin right here, and you can just download it and it's install itself into InDesign, and then that's all there is to it. If you look up here, you'll notice under Design Tools that we have a lot of different options, right? They have their own little app, is called Bookright. And you can download that. They're all free. There's a PDF to book, of course, Adobe InDesign. There's also plugins for Lightroom and Photoshop, but oh, I don't recommend that. And of course, they also have templates and stuff. So what I recommend is the InDesign plugin, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. So once you get that installed, let's see. Once you get that installed, you're going to find it under the file menu that my little face is right on top of. So if you go to file and you come down, you will see here that it says Blurb Book Creator. And all you have to do is click on that. And then you can create a new book, and you can put in your fancy title, give it your name here, whatever. And then you pick the size, etc. You can guess the number of pages, which you can always add or delete, as needed. And then you can go ahead and generate this book, and it will set everything up for you. It's super easy. Let's make a new one just to show you how it looks. Khara's book, Khara, okay. And we'll make an image wrap paper type. This okay, none. Okay, so then whatever these parameters are, we would click create the template. It's going to ask where we want to save it, and there it is. So we can click done, and here's our book. And you can see it's got like margins set up, it's got bleeds set up, and you are ready to just start designing. And then you would add a cover to this. When you're done, you would go back to the book creator, and down here, after choosing your cover type, Blurb makes a separate file to handle the cover. So everybody does this a little bit differently, but we'll just pretend we're done. Okay. And then here, so we would have the actual book pages in one file and the cover in a separate document. And then you can actually upload all of those and order it. Piece of cake, right? I mean, it's really quite simple. So that is what that looks like. Of course, you might be ordering a book from somewhere else. So some other places that I have worked with include MPix and MPix Pro. So that's MPIX and MPIXPRO.com. They are both also super great. And I would, again, use InDesign. So sometimes that means downloading maybe it's a Photoshop template. Maybe that's all they have, because so many labs are just geared towards doing all of this in Photoshop. So if that's all they have, you can download it, figure out what the size is, and then I'm going to show you how you just make your own document in InDesign. Okay, so lots of options here, very flexible. Let's get to it. All right, so in InDesign, first things we want to do is make sure we know what increment we're working in. So if we come up under preferences and we come to units and increments, you can choose, what you want to work with. I'm going to stick with inches here, but if your Photoshop template that you started out looking at is in pixels, you can work in pixels, you can work in millimeters, you can work in any number of things. So you want to set that up. So I've got that the way that I want. Another thing that is helpful is making sure you have your frame set up to auto fit and fill the way that you want it to. So I always just like to check if we go under object and we go to, no, where did it go? Fitting, frame fitting options. Here, I like to have it on fill frame proportionally, and I can never decide if I like auto fit or not. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and turn it on. And that sounds good. We'll click OK. So this means that every time we drop an image into a frame, it's going to automatically fill the frame. And if we move the frame around or make it narrower or whatever, it will automatically scale the image with it. But we still can override that if we want to. So that is all good. Okay. And the last secret sauce bit that I want to make sure you know about is working with Bridge. So I'd love to know in the comments how many people are Bridge users. I'm a big Bridge user. I didn't used to be, but I have been for like, I don't know, 15, 20 years now at least. But what I like to do is Bridge is, looks like any other kind of browser. So I like to have my content window here real big. And then when I'm designing photo books, this is what I do. I drag it over like this. And I do this for a number of reasons, but I basically make it tiny over here on the right side of my screen. And I actually take InDesign and move it over like that. So I am splitting my screen with Bridge. And those of you who've been around a while, you may remember when there used to be something called Mini Bridge. This is basically what Mini Bridge was. I don't know, they killed it at some point. Sorry, Mini Bridge. But it was actually the way Mini Bridge was kind of annoying because it didn't quite work like Bridge. But I like to have my Bridge over here like a little film strip. And that way I could see the images that I have to work with and I can see my layout at the same time. And that is super key, I think. Because especially back in my day when I was designing client albums, I was trying to tell the story of their day, right? So I was really having a thread that wove through the whole album, and I wanted to see what all my choices were and what I was building at the same time, and so I could make the best decisions. So I think that is key, and so that's how I'm going to set that up today. And I don't know, people don't like to cram their screen with stuff, but I will tell you right now that I'm doing this on my little 15-inch MacBook Pro. And I don't know, I'm fine with it. I'm just somehow used to working in a really crammed screen real estate, and it works for me. So just want to put that out there. All right, so we have our Bridge set up. We've got our InDesign set up. Let's make a book. So I'm going to come up to File and choose New Document, not Book. That's tempting, but no. New Document. Now here we have to decide whether we want to make facing pages or work with spreads. And essentially, they're going to end up being the same thing. Actually, let me close this for a second and I'll show you a couple examples that I made ahead of time. So facing pages versus spreads. So if you are a designer who's used to working in InDesign, you are very comfortable with facing pages. But if you are coming from a photography world where you've previously done all this stuff in Photoshop, this might feel weird. So there's no right or wrong. It's just kind of, first of all, what your vendor might require and also what works for you. So let's talk about facing pages first. So in facing pages, you have a left page and a right page, and they each get their own page number, basically. That's how this breaks down. So in this pre-built example that I've got here, I have the first page here at the top. So if you imagine that this is an open book, this book for this fictitious vendor, whoever we're using, their book starts on the right. So here we have a half of a spread, right? And if we come down here, we have a left page, which we can see in the pages panel is page 2, and the right page is page 3. That doesn't mean you can't have images go across both pages. You certainly can. It's just that InDesign considers the left and the right to be separate pages, okay? And we call those facing pages because they face each other. And when you export a document with facing pages like this, you can choose if you want to export the individual left and right sides, or if you want InDesign to export the left and the right sides as a single thing, a single spread. Okay, so just because you build with facing pages doesn't mean you have to export that way. Okay, it's just kind of like whatever works in your brain and your vendor. So let me show you an alternative that might look more familiar for photographers. But notice the facing pages, like the spread right here has a page 2 and a page 3. If we bop over to this version, which is the same book, but set up without facing pages, here we have page 1, and then page 2 is this whole spread. Okay, so it just changes the way the pages are numbered. Now, in this case, though, we can't export individual left and right sides. When we export from this, because there are no facing pages, the page is automatically the full left and right side. So just something to think about. But I think this is how I might demo it today. Okay, so that also means the page values are different. So if this is a 12 by 12 book, let's say, then each of the pages, when they're facing each other, each page is 12 by 12. When we set them up as spreads, then this version, the page is 12 by 24. You get me? Okay, so I hope that is all making sense. Let me know in the chat. All right, but these are just my little demos. Let's go ahead and make one now. So I'll go back up to File, New, Document, and let's make that 12 by 12 book, but let's make it without facing pages to see what that looks like. Because if you're coming from the photo world, that's kind of maybe more what you're used to. But again, you can do this either way. So I'm gonna, for a 12 by 12 book, we would have a width, let's say, of 24, right? And a height of 12. And this is where we turn on or turn off facing pages. And if we want to set up any margins in here, we can do that. This is the important part down here under bleed and slug. So you have to know what you're getting from your vendor, right? Like if you're looking at a Photoshop template, that's going to have the bleed built into it. So if you're putting in the exact same dimensions as the Photoshop template up here, you probably don't need to add a bleed. So again, you have to know who's going to be printing your book and how they want you to set up your file before you do this. So in our little pretend world, we're going to have a final trim size of a 12 by 12 book. So if we're not using facing pages, then each spread is going to be 12 by 24. And let's add the traditional 1/8 of an inch bleed. So I've got 0.125 on all the sides, and we'll go ahead and click create. So that gives us this giant page that is basically, it's a spread, right? We have a left and a right side, but you'll notice because we're not using facing pages, we don't have a line down the middle. It's just one big thing. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's build our first spread in here. We'll come back and do that first single page in a minute. Let's see. Let's put, what did I have? This guy and this guy. So here's what's great about working this way with Bridge collapsed over here on the right-hand side of my screen. I can select these two images and then I can drag them right in, or I've actually built a keyboard shortcut to do that. If you drag them in, you'll notice this. So right now Bridge is active. If I drag them over here and drop them, nothing happens until I click to activate InDesign. And now I can see my cursor loaded with 2 images. So I can decide where I want to put them on here by just clicking and dragging, maybe something like this for one. And now we see my cursor loaded with this guy, and I can click and drag over here. And you'll notice that the frame that I'm dragging is proportional to the image. So if I want to only fill half the spread, but I want to fill the half the width, but the full height, I need to override this proportional limitation. And I can do that by holding the shift key. So now I can make this a square. And we need to draw some guides in here, so I can't tell what I'm doing. But I'm looking at the numbers in the top, and I see that we are close. All right, so when I let go, it pops into place. Now, a couple of things I want to point out, and then we'll jump into the chat and see what questions you have. One, we didn't set up any guides yet. So because we're not using facing pages, we're not able to see the split between the left and the right side because we just have one giant page. So we can do that by using guides. Now, we would never want to draw a guide on every spread because that's a nightmare and way too much work. So in InDesign, what we do instead is we put the guides that we want, we put them in place on our parent page. So in InDesign, we can see all of our pages over here in the Pages panel. If we come to the top section, we have this thing called a parent. And that is automatically applied to all the pages in our document. So anything we put on the a parent is going to automatically show up on every page of our album. We can override that. There's a million ways around it. But for example, if you like all of your pages to have a black background, instead of putting a black background on every single page, you would just put a black background on that parent page and it will automatically carry through to all the little baby pages, right? So the parent page passes on all of those attributes to the babies. So that includes guides. So let's go to the parent page, and we do that by double clicking the little a parent thumbnail. So I'm going to double click, maybe, there we are. And this is our parent page now. So if I want to put a guide right down the middle, I'm going to come over here to the ruler and I'm going to click and drag it out so that it's right at the 12-inch mark. There we go. And that's it. Now, this little guide is going to show up on every page in our album. And we know that this page is applied in this case because one, it happens automatically. But if we ever weren't sure, if we look in the Pages panel, we can see this little A here. So that tells us the A parent has been applied. So basically, this page is a child of parent A. All right, so now to get back to our page and see this guide in place, we just double click back on the page. Ooh, look how close I was when I eyeballed it. Nice. Okay, the other thing I want to point out is that we want to make sure that this frame reaches all the way to the bleed. So if we zoom in up here and we can see we have this magenta line here. This is our margin. This little black line here is the edge of our page. And then if I shrink this out of the way, you can see this red edge. This is the trim. Okay, so when we print things like this, even though the finished book size is going to be 12 by 12, let's say, the actual document that we send to the printer is going to be 12 and a quarter by 12 and a quarter. And then it gets printed and then trimmed down to fit 12 by 12. And the reason is because otherwise it's just way too hard to get everything lined up super perfect. And we don't want any like white edges on the pages where the image is, we want it to go all the way to the edge. To actually make that happen, we have to go a little past the edge. So that's what the bleed is. So you want to make sure when you're putting images that you want all the way to the edge, you have to actually go all the way to that bleed. This image is not going to an edge, so I'm not worried about it. Another thing that would be helpful is to also have another guide here, so each of our pages gets split in half. Because we're working with a spread, the smart guides aren't going to kick in for that horizontal alignment on the individual left and right sides. So I'm going to go back to the A parent and I'm going to drag another guide out at 18 inches and 6 inches. Oh, I was so close. There we go. Now this is perfectly centered on the right half of the spread, and this is on the left. Okay, hopefully this is making sense. Let's pop in the chat and see what I can answer for you. Hi, Teresa. Lovely to have you as always. Okay, so Steven says, so you need to use facing pages when having page numbers on each page using master pages. You can use facing pages or not. And I'm not sure I understand the motivator behind the question here, but if you need to be able to export a left and a right side, because that's what your book vendor requires, then you want to use facing pages. If not, then you could choose to use facing pages or use giant spreads like we've just done. Let's go back. Actually, maybe I can just show you if we set up another book from scratch using facing pages. So let's go back here this time. So instead of 24 by 12, we'll do 12 by 12. We'll enable facing pages and everything else will leave the same and we'll hit create. So now we start with a right side page. If we add another page, we get a left side. And if we add another page, we get the right side of that spread. So here you can see that we have the line down the middle. So we could create the book just the same way. We would maybe grab these same two images even. We can drag them over. And then I could place one on this side and another here. And remember, we want to go all the way to that bleed. And if I want to change the, what's it called? The proportions of this, then I'm going to hold shift. And there we go. So now we have a left and a right here. So if this makes sense for people, we can go this way too. I just know coming from the photo world, the vendors that I worked with just had everything set up as spread. So I often worked that way, but it probably, when you really think about it, it probably makes more sense to do this with facing pages because then at least you have the option, right? So now we've got a left and a right side page. We still want to reach all the way to the bleed and we still have parent pages. Or maybe this is your question. If you use, let's go back. So Steven's asking, if you use spreads, how can you use pages numbers on each side of the spread automatically? Oh, that's a good question. Right. So InDesign lets you add page markers to your pages. And yeah, it wouldn't work. I don't know of a way around it. If you weren't using facing pages, then that InDesign would think of the whole spread as a page. So it wouldn't number your pages accurately. So that's a good point. So in that case, Stephen, you would want to use facing pages. I guess I don't know that I've ever put page numbers on my albums other than like the proof books that I did. But that is a great question. So let me know if that answered it, Stephen. I'm hoping I took care of that for you. Okay, so let's keep rolling. So here is, oh, good. Thank you, Stephen. Glad we got that tackled for you. All right, let's keep rolling. And we can use either one. We'll work with the facing pages file because there's one little weird trick about it that might be helpful to know. Yes, so let's add a couple more pages here, right? So you'll notice if we click to add a page, because this document has facing pages, it adds a page at a time. So here's the left page, and I can click again, whoops, and get the right. And again, a left and a right again. Okay, so if we zoom out, you can see how this is looking. And it always will just go left page, right page, left page, right page. And when we export, again, we would have the choice of exporting the individual pages or combining the left and right into a spread. All right, let's take a look at another way to really speed up your work if you want to make grids. So I did this a lot in my wedding album layouts because clients always wanted so desperately to have every single photo in their book. And it was like, no, less is more, right? So, but sometimes when I need to cover kind of a swath of story on a single spread, I would make these grids. And it's so easy in InDesign. So I'm going to grab the frame tool. In our other example, we drew the frames. No, we didn't. We dragged them in from Bridge, and we automatically then drew the frames with a loaded cursor, and InDesign plopped the images in. This time, let's draw the frames first. So I'm going to come over here, and I've got my frame tool. So the keyboard shortcut is F for frame. And I'm just going to come over, and I'm not going to reach this to the bleed yet. And the reason will be clear in a minute why. We will, after we draw the grid, we will extend it to the bleed. But right now, because the spacing is baked in, I don't want to include the bleed yet. So I'm going to come over here right on the edge of the page, and I'm just going to click and drag and draw a frame like this. Now I'm holding my mouse down, and while I'm still holding it down, I'm going to tap the up arrow on my keyboard, which automatically splits the frame into 2 rows. And then if I tap the right arrow 3 times, then I'm going to split it into 4 columns. So I have a total of 8 frames. And now I can let go, and they're all perfectly built in here and spaced and everything. Now here is why I didn't want to put in all the way to the bleed yet, is because right now they're all the same size. And the only frames that I want to enlarge to that bleed are the 2 here on the side. So I'm going to click away to deselect all of them. And then I'm going to drag across those 2 frames. And now I'll just drag these 2 frames a little wider to reach the bleed, because that part's going to get cut off anyway. All right, so now we have these frames here, and let me make sure they're centered, something like this. All right, so we've got 8 images. Let's go over to Bridge and see what we find that we might want to put in here. So I'm going to grab this, and I'm honestly just looking for color because this is a travel book and we can do whatever we want. How many do I have? Oh, that's also nice. Bridge shows me down here at the bottom how many images I have selected, so I don't have to try to keep it in my head. I can see right down there that I've got 7, so I need 1 more, and we'll just do this guy. All right, so I have these 8 images, so I'm going to bring them over here to InDesign. So my cursor is loaded. You can see that it says it has 8 images. So all I'm going to do is click and drop them where I want them to go. Maybe this one we'll put here, here. I mean, you can be as like strategic about it as you want. There we go. All right. And you'll notice that those all popped in and automatically filled the frame. Now, we may not like the composition of how it filled the frame, so we can always adjust that. And we have several ways to do it. If we double click on here with our selection tool, we can select not the frame, but the image within the frame. And then we could reposition it. Maybe we want to move it up or down, or maybe left or right, or maybe we want to scale it up. So we can click and drag it and reposition it and all of that. So that's kind of nice. Another thing that's really cool about this is if we want to avoid just having all squares, we can use the gap tool by pressing U for the gap tool. We can come in here and check this out. I could take this whole column and slide it over. So these are wider, but maybe I want this image to be wider and this image to be wider. So if I want to split the column in half, I just hold shift and now I can move just this gap. Look at that. So we can come in here and adjust all this. So like this is a vertical image. If I hold shift, I can give it more space. And what else? This is also vertical. Let's do that. And again, I can come back with my selection tool. And if I double click on any of these, I can adjust them within this frame. So many options. Isn't that just so cool? So that's called Gridify. And we did that with just the frame tool. And all you have to do is before you let go of your mouse, while you're still holding it down, you tap the up and down or left and right arrow keys to break it into rows and columns. Another cool thing you can do with frames and with Gridify, I'm going to do one more thing here. I'm going to grab the frame tool and let's come and create another frame over here for this side of the spread. And again, before I let go, I'm going to make 3 columns. And now I'm going to let go. But I want one image to be broken up across those 3 frames. So I can select all 3 frames. And if we come to Object, Pathfinder, and we choose Add, look at that. Do you see the difference? Here we have 3 X's. The X's are placeholders for the image. And once we combine them, we get 1 X. And now we can go over here to our images, and I'm just going to drag in this image here. And look at that. So that is a look at Gridify tool. It's a great way to use the frame tool. Okay, if we look over in the chat, I see a question from Elizabeth about pagination. So what about pagination, Elizabeth? Let me know specifically what your question is, and I can try and answer it. Maybe that was Steve's question about naming it, or when we export, again, we have the option of exporting individual spreads or individual pages or full spreads. So what else? I'm glad to see that D. Davis always uses Bridge. Teresa, always also big Bridge user for sure, right? So handy. Okay, let's pop back over while you guys keep the questions coming. And I was going to show you, let's see, one more thing here. Let's drag in let's get tricky here. Up here with page 1, depending on your vendor, page 1 might be a single page. It might be a spread. It could be any number of things. Some vendors may also even be okay with you having your cover right in your same document, but it might be a different size. So it's worth pointing out that you can customize any of the individual pages within your document using the page tool here. So if I'm active on page 1, I'm going to come to the page tool here in my toolbar. And then let's say that this one, because of the way it's printed and whatever, let's pretend this is the cover. And maybe this needs to be 12.5. Or maybe it needs to be like, I don't know, 14 or something, just because it does. Oops. There we go. So by selecting the page and grabbing the page tool here, we can customize the first spread, the first page, the first spread, or if you're okay with putting your cover in the same document, then that is another option. So I'm just going to drag in another image here, and maybe this will be our cover. Of course, here's the trouble with working in wonderful mode is it's easy to forget to drag all the way to the bleeds. So I call it wonderful mode. Wonderful mode. When you press W, you can toggle that on and off to see, just to see your design without all of the guides and stuff. And it will also hide the bleed. So it's showing you what the trim view of your document will be. So just make sure when you're building that you're not doing it all in wonderful mode, because you might forget to draw the bleeds in there. Okay, so that is more or less an overview of how you actually build the document, how you work with Bridge. Let me show you some tips for editing these things. So I'm going to launch Photoshop because it's not yet running, and I'm going to show you how you would go through whether you're trying to just edit your images, or maybe you're going through a review process with a client and they want you to swap images in and out, and just how do you manage all of that? So let's go here in InDesign. So let's say you're looking at this and then you're like, you know what? Maybe, maybe this photo, for whatever reason, maybe this should be black and white. I don't know. I'm not saying that's the right design choice here, but just for sake of teaching, let's pretend. So let's say we want to take this image and we want to open it up in Photoshop and make it black and white. You could go to the links panel. This is where Photoshop keeps track of all the images in your document. You could go to the links panel and you could click the little pencil here that will pop that file into Photoshop to edit. You could go to the menu up here and you could choose to edit the original if Photoshop is your default, or you could go to edit with and you could choose any number of apps to edit with, or that is all way too much of a hassle. The other thing you can do is hold down Alt or Option and then just double click on that image. That will open it in Photoshop. Now, this is a JPEG, so you can choose whether or not you want to edit this and then save it as something else and then relink it, or just to demonstrate, I'm going to just do a quick and dirty desaturation and I'm just going to save over it. And then I'm going to close it. And then if we bounce back to InDesign, you'll see that InDesign already updated it. So that is one way to do all of this. If you're like, wait, I don't want to be doing that to my images, I don't want to be saving over them, then you can also take the image, if you double click, and let's do the same thing where we'll make this black and white, do some adjustments. Now I'm going to save this separately, and I'm going to make a new folder called edits or retouched or whatever. And we'll save it there with the same file name. So now it's not going to update because InDesign is linking to this image file. But if I worked through my whole album and then I was ready to bring in all of the newly edited images, I could go to the links panel, select all of them, and then I could relink it to the folder that I now have to navigate to. Good job, Khara. Here, to my retouched folder. And if I hit choose, then it will automatically update all of the links to the edited folder. So for those of you who like to keep everything separate on your system, that is another way to work. Okay. Another thing that was handy sometimes is, if clients were going through this and they were like, hey, can you use a different image of Mount Fuji here? Or more often it was like, maybe I want a picture with this other bridesmaid here instead, or whatever thing, right? Instead of then trying to find this in Bridge or coming over to the links panel and pulling it up and revealing in Bridge, you can make a keyboard shortcut for that. So my keyboard shortcut was always Command Option right arrow. Is that right? Maybe I lied. Or maybe I broke it. That used to be my keyboard shortcut. We'll do it the old school way. Reveal in Bridge. There we go. So that would then pull up that image in Bridge. And so, if you have a series of Mount Fuji or whatever, presumably they would kind of be close together in sequence, and you could just find a different one and drag it in. So it really makes it easy. I got to tell you, when I was designing all these wedding albums, like it took me like an hour to do the whole thing. And it was so valuable for clients, and I always felt so good about giving them that. And it really doesn't have to take a ton of time. Okay, so let's talk about how we get this out of here. We'll pop into the chat and see what dying questions we have, and then we'll walk through there. Okay, so, oh, good. So Khara, or maybe it's Khara, says earlier Khara was saying that she made a book for a birthday gift for a 90-something-year-old, and it was a big hit. And now you need to order 7 more. That's great. Okay, I didn't see that earlier. That's great. Okay, so Elizabeth now here. Good. Thank you for clarifying this question about pagination. Elizabeth says, will the printer rearrange pages for front and back of the book? You always want to check with your printer how they want you to do this. So when you are ready to send the file to them, as we're going to see in a minute, you're not going to send them the InDesign file. You would probably send a PDF, or if you're sending this to like a photo lab, sometimes they are going to want JPEGs, which just kind of makes me like cringe a little bit, but it's fine. That's how they work. It's just funny. That's just, the photo world is a different world. So they're not going to probably be rearranging anything. Like, they're going to take your PDF and print it, or they're going to take your series of JPEGs and print it. But when you have those types of really specific questions, you always want to check with them, because again, you want to know who your vendor is going to be before you build your book, so that you can build it exactly how they want. So some of them, for example, are going to want the cover and the pages of the book in one PDF. Others might want a separate file for the cover. So maybe you just upload a PDF of the book itself and a separate file for the cover. And then some are just going to be like, hey, send us all your JPEGs. And one of them will be a different size for the cover than the pages, possibly, right? And it will also depend if the cover is just like a front cover, or if it's a wraparound cover that includes the backside, and whether it's canvas or metal or acrylic or cloth, or, oh my gosh, there are so many options. But you'll definitely want to know and check with them. And if you have questions, they are going to be the best to answer them. So you want to know how they want the file set up, sizes, the pagination, all of that. They'll tell you if the book's going to start on the right or the left, etc. And they'll tell you also how they want it delivered. So if they want PDFs, they're going to tell you how to bake the PDF so it exports the way they want. So I'll show you that in a moment. Marilyn is asking, how would I add text below and or to the side of each photo, longer than what I might put in a caption in the photo file itself? Okay, so there are ways in InDesign where you can automate the inputting of text from like the metadata of the photo. You can automate that and pull it in and have it appear like a caption. But it sounds like you're asking about basically just adding text frames, right? So maybe that's a great question. Maybe like, let's say on this spread here, maybe you want to change this layout for whatever reason. Maybe you want to just focus on these little guys and then you want a little text blurb under here. Then you would just grab the type tool and you can click and drag out a little text frame. And then we could fill this with some type. I'm just going to fill it with placeholder text. But, then you would get in here and choose your text settings, and you can get fancy and you can put drop caps in here and all kinds of cool stuff. So it's as simple as that. If you're trying to automate like stuff that you've got set in the images for captions and stuff, that's a different process. But I think this is what you were asking. So, and how do you do Gridify? Now she's following up. How do I do that with Gridify? That's a good question. Let's see. I don't think I've ever tried Gridify with the type tool. I don't know that it would. Oh, look at that. It's doing it. Oh, and this is cool. Oops. Let's get that message off here, huh? Okay, I've never tried this before, Marilyn. What a fun question. So I used the text tool or the type tool, and I did the same thing. And I just held it down, my cursor down, and used the same arrow keys, and it broke it up. And it looks like it threaded all of these text frames together. So if we go to View and we go to Extra, Show Text Threads, you can see they're threaded together. So that means that as you type in one, oops. Oh my gosh. As you type in one of them, and then come on now. As you fill this up, oh my gosh. Facing pages is a hot topic. There we go. So as you fill up the text here, you will see that it will flow through all the text frames. So if you want that, it seems to happen automatically when you draw the grid with the text frames, with the text frame tool. If you don't want that, you can unlink them, but I imagine that you could also just use the frame tool to make a grid, and then you should be able to just put text in it the same, and then they wouldn't be linked. So this would then be a text frame. Does that make sense? So if you draw a Gridify with the type tool, they will automatically be threaded. If that's not what you want, you can draw it with the frame tool, just like it was images. And then if you just click into it with the type tool, you can convert it from a frame placeholder to a text frame. So yay. Oh, Elizabeth said this is so helpful. It's great, right? And James, I see your point. You do not need facing pages to build a book. That is correct. You could just make spreads. Up to you. All right, let's talk about how we export this quick. Oh my gosh. And then we're kind of at the end here. So hopefully this has been helpful for everybody. So once you've got your book, you've already finalized it. Everything looks great. Don't forget to use spell check if you're putting text in here. And then you obviously save your file. And then when you're ready to export, let's go to File, Export, and we'll give it a name. We'll put it on my desktop because that's the only way I can find anything when I'm teaching, it feels like. Final book. Okay, and down here under Format, I'm going to choose PDF for now. Now again, whoever is making your book, they will tell you how to export it for them. So this is just kind of a generic example. So I'm going to say PDF. Up here, we have little recipes for what kind of PDF we want to make. In this case, you probably would choose press quality. Again, check with your vendor. Then you can go down here and, tweak all of these different settings. But the main things you want to pay attention to here are here under Pages. You can tell it, this is where you can tell it to export as left and right pages. Or you can export with the left and right pages joined as a spread. So individual pages like this, in this example, the first page is just a right side. That would stay just a right side. And pages 2 and 3 would be joined. Pages 4 and 5 would be joined. Or if we export all the individual pages, then everything will be export individually. Again, check with your vendor. You want to make sure that you have under bleeds here. So come down to marks and bleeds, and you want to make sure you use your document bleed settings. Otherwise, this whole thing will be output, but all the image area, remember how we extended it to the edge? All of that would just not be included. And then you don't have bleeds at all. So if you are using bleeds, if your printer people told you that you need bleeds, then when you are cooking up your PDF here, make sure you include them. And then you would hit export. So what do we say for pages here? So this document is set up with facing pages, but just to show you, let's go ahead and export it as spreads. And then we'll see here. I think I have it set to automatically open. Is it going to make me a liar? I think it's working. Here it comes. There we go. So here is our first right-hand side page. And then if we scroll to the next page, because we told it to export spreads, you can see it joined the left and the right page. And if we go down another page, here again, we have our left and our right spreads. And then, and then that was the end of our design work. Okay. So that is different than if we export this and we call it final book pages. Let's do it so you can see the difference. And now we'll export individual pages and we'll do it again. Dun, 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 dun. And now if we zoom out or cycle through the pages, now you can see the left page and the right page are separate. And I didn't have my alignment right. So look at that. It's messed up a little bit. But there you can see the difference. So eventually in the finished book, it's all going to be the same thing, right? So it's really just a question of how the printer or the bookmaker, how they want the file. Okay, so don't get too hung up on it. Some last minute questions here. Pop into the chat. Elizabeth says, this is so helpful. Well, I'm so glad, Elizabeth. I'm glad you could be here and that this is helping you out. Marilyn says, thank you. That's enough information to experiment with. I'm so glad. ID Studios Inc. says, what was the tool called to adjust the gridify? That's the gap tool. So the keyboard shortcut is U, like the letter U, and I think of it as unjacking your gaps. I don't know. There's not an easy way to remember that, but it's the fourth tool from the top. So that is this guy right here, the gap tool. And when you're using the gap tool, experiment with holding the shift key, holding option, holding or alt, and command or control, because it does different things. Like we could spend hours. This could be a whole course. There's a lot of good info here. And I also want to let everybody know, if you are a CreativePro member, there are links down below the video today, the live stream. There are links where you can find a step-by-step written tutorial from yours truly about building photo books in InDesign, as well as, what else do we have down there? As well as an article from David Blattner about using object styles in your photo books. So for example, maybe you like all of your frames to have a 4-point black stroke around them or whatever. You can use object styles to automate that process so that it's consistent and quick and easy to edit if you change your mind. So that is also linked below. And then David wanted me to point out this plugin that he has used before called Photo Flinger. And it's a free, I think it's free. It might not be free. I don't remember now. But it wasn't, I think it's free. It was called Photo Flinger, and it helps you with layouts. I've never personally used it because I just felt like I don't need help. It's so easy and fast that honestly getting a plugin to do like a grid for me was not as fast as just doing it myself in InDesign. But if you want to check it out, there's a link for that below. And the two Creative Pro magazine articles for subscribers are also linked below. And if you want to become a member, you can learn more at creativepro.com, where you can find all the archived issues of Creative Pro magazine, which is such a great resource. Like, I don't know about you, but every time I Google anything, how to do anything in any of the design apps, I always end up back in Creative Pro magazine's archives, where there is an exhaustive article collection of everything you wanted to know about whatever your question was, and so much more that you never even knew to ask. It really is incredible. So if you are all into this now and you're like, I am loving InDesign, and how can I level it up with AI, then check out our Design and AI Summit happening November 13th and 14th. We would love to have you join us. It's going to be a great event with so many InDesign and Illustrator, Photoshop, AI gurus. It is really amazing. And you can save $100 with the promo code LIVESTREAM. If you go to creativepro.com/events, that will save you some moolah. All right, everybody, thank you so much for being here. I'm Khara Plicanic, and what else would you like to see us cover in a live stream? Let me know in the comments below, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their week and has a great fall, and I will see you again next month. Bye-bye.